is your relationship with time? Are you wired and tired, stressed and overwhelmed, busy and going nowhere? Or just want to scale your business? Welcome to Take Back Time with your host, Penny Zenker. Penny focuses on books, strategies, tools, and tips to help you work smarter and approach your time more strategically. As a result, you can have more energy, focus, and get more done in less time. Be more efficient and effective. Get ready to take back time.
Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker, and today I'm going to play back a recording that I did from a previous interview with Dr. John Perry, who's written The Art of Procrastination. And I think you'll find it really interesting, some of the tips that he gives, and also how he celebrates his own procrastination, which he believes gives him more productivity at the end of the day. So listen in and let me know what you think.
I'm Penny Zenker, and I'm joined today by Dr. John Perry, Stanford professor, author, radio host, and a number of other very productive things, I might add, for a procrastinator. Welcome, Dr. Perry.
Thank you, Penny. Glad to be back.
So I wanted to ask you, we were talking in our last segment a little bit about, I told you about my concept of championship psychology. You know, reframing is a very powerful tool in creating a championship psychology for yourself and also for others. You know, in that witty essay that you talked about that it's difficult for a procrastinator such as yourself to get motivated to complete a task until it's less important than another task. And so essentially you're reframing the task that you're doing so that you can feel kind of like there's less at stake, right, than another task. And I was wondering, is it the importance that we're reframing or the urgency?
That's a good question. Boy, I'm glad you weren't sitting over my shoulder when I was trying to finish this book. I would have. It's really, I suppose, the importance, because what I recommend is you realize you have this, somehow it's easier to do things you're not supposed to be doing, or that I say are not at the top of your long-range priority list. But then you realize that, well, you know, often the thing that I was procrastinating about turned out not to be so important. So look for opportunities like that. Look for things that seem important and will motivate you to do other things, but in the end aren't all that important. And people say, well, this is self-deception. And I say, well, yeah, most procrastinators have pretty good self-deceptive skills. Now, of course, we want to work for something beyond that, or some of us do some of the time. Try to get something like learn Chinese. Now, that's important and difficult, and almost anything I'd rather do than not devote time to learning Chinese. So if I could really convince myself that that's what I ought to be doing, I could really do a lot of other things as a way of not doing that. But there's another kind of to-do list that's very important, and that's a completely different kind of thing. We were talking about people who, like me, have difficulty getting out of bed.
Okay.
Now, you said you just pop out of bed. I have vague memories when I was younger of popping out of bed. I have a feeling you're a lot younger than I am. What are you, about 30? Well, that's
I can't say that. We're on the radio. I can't tell people.
Yeah, you can't say that. You say, well, you sound full of energy.
I'm very
and you pop out of bed. That's a foreign way of life to many of us. We might aspire to be like you, but we're not like you.
Okay.
So how do I get out of bed? Well, that's what I use to-do lists for. Not necessarily written down, but sometimes written down. You need to break your day up into very small, easily satisfiable tasks, and then give yourself a pat on the back for doing them. So I do
agree with that.
Yeah, I'm out of bed, pat on the back. I started the coffee, pat on the back. I had a shower, pat on the back. I drank a cup of coffee. That's important. 2 pats on the back. So by the time I sit down at my desk to start grading papers or whatever I have to do that day, I've got a head of steam. I'm looking at myself as, you know, what a productive, take charge kind of guy I am. I've already done 10 things on my to-do list. Now, the fact that there's things like get out of bed, go to the bathroom, make a cup of coffee, that's not so important as the idea that, well, check. Because there have been in mornings when I haven't gotten any of those things done. You probably never had an experience like that, but many of us do. There's a Japanese term for this, breaking things up into small tasks, which I should have jotted down somewhere, but it's in the book. But it's a really good idea. Break tasks into smaller tasks. Absolutely. And this has to do with not setting the bar too high. So if you just think of, well, I know that you spent some time in Switzerland, and so you knew German, and maybe you had to learn German. If you just put learn German on there, that's pretty hard. But say learn 10 vocabulary words or learn 5 vocabulary words. over years' time, you've learned quite a bit. So two kinds of to-do lists. First, this big, maybe self-deceptive to-do list in which you motivate yourself to do things further down on the list as a way of not doing things further up on the list. That's structured procrastination. But then this kind of break each task into easy subtasks and give yourself credit each time you do any of them. For many of us, that's really an important feature of a productive day. Plus music. You got to have the right music. If you love classical music and so you play the Eroica Symphony, you probably spend the whole day getting more and more depressed. But if you play Neil Diamond, you'll get perky. Now, that's going to offend a lot of people, but
Depends
Neil Diamond
on,
and Beethoven
I like
is the same thing. You
right.
can kind of compromise on Leonard Cohen, who's got kind of pessimistic thoughts but a really good beat. But I digress.
Right. Well, it's that beat and that rhythm that helps us create a certain emotional state, which in that emotional state is kind of what I'm talking about with championship psychology is how do we use, what elements do we need to help us to get to that emotional state? And I completely agree that music is a wonderful way to help us to change our state whenever we see that it's not working the way that we want it to work. Yeah. I'm sure anybody, you've probably had this experience where you're in a bad mood and something happened and then something comes on the radio and it just totally shifts your entire mental state because you're hearing something that's got that beat or brings you back to a particular time that was in your life that was great or whatever. Music is very powerful. We need to change things in our environment, right? That's what helps us also to get in that psychological state and more productive. So, for instance, to get you out of bed, right, if the first thing that came on the radio after your alarm goes up is Start Me Up and a couple of things that really get you in a positive state, that's going to have an influence of getting you out of bed. You know, and if the coffee machine starts itself and you can smell the coffee downstairs, that doesn't hurt either, right?
If you had a teenager, how would you get him up? Well, you'd put on music. It wouldn't be his choice, it'd be your choice.
Right.
You'd get the bacon going. Well, you have to do the same thing with yourself, but the self that does the manipulating has to be the self the night before. Just when you set an alarm clock, that's self-manipulation. That's the self the night before, creating a situation that the self in the morning wouldn't choose. I wouldn't choose to set an alarm clock for myself,
right?
But the self the night before did. So the successful life is full of self-manipulation, although I suppose if you're successful enough, it doesn't even seem like that.
Well, you plan ahead.
Well, you know, William James, a great philosopher, and he distinguished between two kinds of people. One of them he called healthy-minded. I don't know what he called the other one, maybe sick-minded, but I don't like that. Let's just say gloomy-minded.
Okay.
Right? And I have a feeling people like you, they wake up and say, well, here's another bright day in this bright, wonderful world, and I'm a bright, accomplished person, and I'm going to make a contribution to making the world better. That's great. Then there's gloomy people like me who wake up and say, oh, God, the world has taken one more step closer to climatological catastrophe, overpopulation, erosion of rights, all young pretty girls having tattoos and all young men wearing their pants around their knees. Who wants to wake up into such a world? And the gloomy-minded person needs all the artificial help he can get. The alarm clock, the Rolling Stones, the coffee, the bacon.
Well, it's interesting. And, you know, it'd be interesting to think about what would you be without all of those, if you want to call those automatic negative thoughts, or what would you be without those thoughts and without procrastination? Who would you be?
What would I be like? I would be unrecognizable as a human being. But I would probably be a very happy human being.
You said you think you'd be happy? What would be different in your life? I'm just curious. Like if if you saw yourself as free from that and from those thoughts.
Well, see, it would be like being a lot younger than I am, because I used to have a more optimistic view about the world. And it's not that I have a well-thought-out pessimistic view about the world. It's just, life is like walking down the street, and you're accosted by different things. You walk by a bakery, you're accosted by the smell of fresh rolls. And then your desires take over, right? And you want a fresh roll. And then your desires incorporate beliefs. Your desires for a fresh roll kind of looks around your psyche and finds something you read that says rolls are really good for you or something like that.
Oh, right. You'll find whatever you need to find in the moment, right?
Or you say, well, I'm only going to pass this bakery once this week, so if I have a roll, it's not so bad. Then your executive function takes over and says, oh, you're fooling yourself. The only way you can maintain a weight that's anywhere near reasonable is consistently pass up such opportunities. So your life is really shaped by the street you're walking down. Although in the end, if you're a rational human being, there's this executive thing which is relatively unaffected by those things that kind of keeps charge of everything. So as you get older, depending on your life, but you see more worthwhile people where things don't turn out. You see more problems and so forth. You have children and they have problems. You have grandchildren and they have problems. On the other hand, on certain days, you see your children, they're happy, your grandchildren are happy. So there's a lot of input, and that's what percolates up from your psychology. And it may be happy, it may not be happy. But if you have this executive function, that is the thing at the top that says, well, my job is to keep control of these desires and not be swayed so much by the particular mood or input of the moment, you have to develop that. If you're like me, if you're a gloomy-minded person, you have to develop that. Says, come on, Perry, the world's not coming to an end, and, just because boys like to wear their pants down around their butt doesn't mean that things are hopeless and so forth and so on. So what would it be like to not need that, to just be maybe like I imagine these healthy-minded people are? They just get up and they don't think about all these negative things. It would be far different. That's about all I can say. I like to be around such people. If you're one of them, great. I'd like to be around you. I'd like to talk to you on the phone.
Well, great. That sounds good. And that says something, right? Because the way we develop and the way we grow is shaped by the people that we spend our life with. I forget who it was that said, show me your life and I'll show you the people that you hang out with.
Distractions are the enemy of productivity. Go to distractionquiz.com and find out your distraction profile. Are you a time zombie or a hamster? Take this free distraction quiz today to rate your ability to focus on what keeps you from being a wizard. Go to distractionquiz.com.
Unfortunately, we are coming to the close of our time together. So tell our listeners out there where they can learn more about you, your books, your programs, your radio show. Give us some URLs and places that we can find out more about you.
Okay, well, of course, you can go read the book, steal it, you can borrow it, or best, buy it. So it's called The Art of Procrastination, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and hopefully your local bookstore was the best place to buy it. You can find out more about me at the website Philosophy Talk, that's all one word, philosophytalk.org. That's the website for a radio program I do with my dear friend Ken Taylor, where we actually, contrary to what the public radio people thought, have made success of a show based on philosophy and philosophical topics. You can also, for even if you're interested in really digging deep into the various stuff I've written, you can go to john.jperry.net, where you find all kinds of stuff. There's also a structured procrastination website, structuredprocrastination.org.
Great, structuredprocrastination.org. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was a really great discussion and thought-provoking, I think, for many of our listeners here.
Well, thank you, Penny. It's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot from you.
Great. I'm glad. And I know that you have a book around identity, so we'll have to have you back when we talk about purpose and identity again.
Okay, very good.
So to close out today's session of Take Charge of Your Productivity, I'd like you to imagine at the end of each day connecting to what's really important to you, that greater purpose. Visualize yourself already having achieved it and how great it feels and how things would be different now that you've reached those goals. How much more focus would you have? Make a point that the first 2 hours in the morning that you get up, that you focus on something that advances you towards those ultimate goals that you've set for yourself. I mean, after all, you still have 1,320 minutes left in the day to do whatever's urgent or to procrastinate if that's what you want to do. So set up your environment. We talked in the show also intertwined about how important the environment is to set up and support you in getting the biggest items done first and really to eliminate distractions. Priorities need to be set around the critical success factors and doing what you need to do to maintain that championship psychology. By setting clear priorities based on those factors, then you're able to support yourself with critical tactical planning and scheduling. It can be really difficult to distinguish what's important from what's urgent, especially when many of us are taught from an early age to place an urgency on low priority tasks. The secret sauce that will let you quickly and consistently prioritize, now listen carefully and take out your pencils, it's by asking quality questions. That's what's going to address those automatic negative thoughts that we've talked about. And it's also going to help you get clarity on what to prioritize and what needs to be done in your urgent and in your important sector. Nearly 100% of the time for prioritization can be cleared up by simply asking questions about the task. This has had amazing effects for my clients. So for instance, why does it have the deadline that it does? Is that deadline feasible or appropriate or necessary? Will it bring you closer to your goals? What results need to be achieved? Is that result really worth your time and energy? And don't ask only yourself these questions, but also ask the others who are involved in setting these goals and these deadlines. You know, I once worked with an organizer who would help people to decide what to keep in their office and what to box up. And they would do that by asking them to look at each item that was cluttering the room and say, do I need it? Do I love it? Does it make me money? And you can approach your tasks in the exact same way. Things that you need to include, for instance, paying the electric bill or buying paper for the printer. And things that you love are the tasks that bring you joy and fulfillment, that give you that energy so that you can be better focused and appreciate what you achieve more. And finally, will the task result in financial gain, energy gain, or some kind of time gain that's going to feed either of the financial or the energy gain? You can usually eliminate the tasks that don't fit into those categories, and you'll be amazed at the results.
Thanks for listening to today's interview with Dr. John Perry. You know, I wanted to just close off this session with talking about procrastination. It's something that I've written about in my best-selling book, The Productivity Zone, Stop the Tug of War with Time. And I talk about it in what I call the productivity curve. And on one side of the curve, we have procrastination. And on the other side, we have perfectionism. And in the middle, that's where we have the productivity zone. You know, it happens. We procrastinate from time to time, but we've got to be aware of it, right? Conscious of when we're actually procrastinating so that we can shift quickly into the productivity zone. So, you know, Dr. John Perry here has some interesting thoughts about that in terms of breaking things down. It's really also about getting into action, right? He breaks things down so that he can get into action. So if you want to break the cycle of procrastination, you want to get as quickly as possible of getting into action, taking that next small step. And you can do that through asking yourself quality questions that are going to help you to do that. You can even have a mantra like Mel Robbins talks about, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, extremely effective. Break it down and just set clear priorities so that you can know what you want to be focusing on and what you need to be focusing on. Hey, and I never said it was easy, but when you can put some strategies in place and have a couple of brain hacks, well, you can see yourself shifting from procrastination into the productivity zone. And the quicker you recognize it, the quicker you can make that shift. And when you practice it, like any type of sports move or any type of skill, you're going to get better at it. You're going to get faster. And who knows, maybe you'll even start to teach other people. So that's today's interview. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Penny Zanker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Today's topic is another opportunity for you to put the knowledge you learned into practice. Tune in again next week for more strategies that will help you have more energy and focus to get more done in less time, so you can continue to take back time.